Hello, my name is Dr. Appel from Ado Psychology Center, where we specialize in treating anxiety, depression, and OCD. Welcome to our video seminar series. Hope you enjoy this video. This video is on acceptance and commitment therapy, which is considered a third wave cognitive behavioral therapy. The first wave being more behavioral, second wave cognitive, and then third wave ACT, among others. So let's discuss ACT in a nutshell. The main goal of ACT is to create psychological flexibility in order to engage in value-driven behavior regardless of internal experience. And you might ask, what does that mean? Well, number one, it's not really, the focus is not symptom reduction. It's not to make you feel better or have less symptoms, but rather it's to teach you how to live life with your symptoms. And then when you do that, usually your symptoms tend to reduce on their own as well. And we'll get more into the details as we go on with this presentation. The method is not by changing thoughts, unlike traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, as you can learn more about in my video on CBT. And it's not by changing your emotions either. Instead, ACT therapy is about changing our relationship with our thoughts and with our emotions. So we're not fighting with the thoughts, we're trying to change them or disprove them, and we're not trying to reduce negative emotions, but rather we are learning how to live with them and still enjoy our lives and changing our relationship to them, but not themselves. We're not actually changing the thoughts or the emotions directly. This will make more sense as we go along, I promise. The main question that's asked in ACT is workability. Specifically, are these thoughts or emotions that I'm experiencing helping me engage in behavior that is in line with my values, or are these thoughts and emotions getting in the way of me engaging in value-driven behavior? Okay, so it's not a question of are these thoughts true or false, or are these emotions like bad or good? It's a very simple question of workability. Are these thoughts working for me? Are these thoughts helping me live the life I want to live? Are these emotions helping me live the life I want to live? Please note that this is different than the question often asked in traditional CBT, which is, are these thoughts accurate? Do my emotions match the actual circumstances? So traditional CBT is all about, am I thinking in an accurate way, in a truthful way? And if not, if I'm thinking in an exaggerated way or a distorted way, let's find, let's identify that and then restructure those thoughts so that I'm thinking more accurately and I'm feeling more in line with what my actual circumstances, um, the way my actual circumstances should be making me feel. But in ACT, we don't care about truth. We don't care about, if the thoughts are true or not true. It just comes down to one question. If the thought is true, but it's getting in the way of you living the life you want to live and living in line with your values, then what good is it, right? Let's say it's true that you are not such a smart person, whatever that means. But if you keep thinking I'm not so smart, is that helping you live the life you want to live? Are you living in line with your values? Are you passionate about life? Is life meaningful? Or is it distracting you and taking you away from the life that you want to live? That's the question at workability. So let's discuss now the ACT framework. It's called the Hexaflex. You'll see why in a moment. And the goal is to get you to psychological flexibility so that you can then live your life the way you want to live it in a flexible way. So there are 6 components to the Hexaflex. We're going to divide it up into the right column, values and committed action, the left column, acceptance and diffusion, and then the ones on top and bottom, contact with the present moment and self as context. So instead of discussing all of them at once right now, why don't we break them down one at a time? Let's begin with values. In ACT, a lot of time is spent on identifying what your values are. And there are different ACT worksheets that can help you get to figuring them out. Some people know their values pretty clearly from day one. Some people think they know their values until they realize actually these are not my values. These are values that I was taught or handed down to me, but these are actually not my values. And some people don't really know what their values are. They're just living life, and now you ask them, well, what are your values? And it takes some time to figure that out, which is fine. But in ACT, it's really important to figure out what your values are. Why? Because remember, the question of workability is, are you living the life that you want to be living? And is it meaningful for you? And that usually comes down to your values. Are you living in line with your values? Are you living the life you want to live that's meaningful to you? So that's, I was going to say that's step one, but in ACT, all the 6 components can be worked on at different points in treatment. There is no specific order, but values often is like the leading flag to help you get to where you want to get to. Committed action refers to engaging in the behaviors necessary to live a life in line with your values and committing to doing so. So, for example, if your values are family oriented, so spending time with your family would be an example of committed action activity. Or if your values relate to religion, engaging in the religious practices would be considered committed action. Another example would be if one of your values is staying healthy or being in good physical shape. So perhaps going to the gym or exercising or eating well is in line with your values. What's really interesting about this specific part of the Hexaflex and ACT, it allows you to really do any type of treatment or therapy that's proven to be helpful and fit it into ACT. So for example, we spoke in the CBT seminar about exposures as a behavioral component for anxiety disorders, for example. So doing exposures, while it's not directly necessarily an ACT technique, although exposures to emotions definitely could be, but even if it's not an ACT technique, if you're committed to getting over your anxiety and you know that exposures help, it definitely could fit neatly into this part of the model. So ACT in that way is a great framework to work within, regardless of whatever general treatment modality you are working in. Although there are times where other modalities can conflict with ACT, perhaps cognitive restructuring from CBT versus cognitive diffusion in ACT. But in general, it's great to keep in mind, as you're doing ACT therapy, you really do have the freedom and flexibility to include other modalities as well within this component of the model, and you're still staying within you're still having fidelity to the ACT model at the same time. So before we go on to cognitive diffusion, which is the next component I'll speak about, and I know right now everything's a bit disjointed, but hopefully it will come together in the end. So one thing to know about ACT is that it's full of experiential exercises and metaphors. So a lot of points can be gotten across better when it's experienced than when it's spoken about. And so for cognitive diffusion, I'm going to do that right now with you. We're going to do an exercise to kind of describe what cognitive diffusion is. So take a moment and put your hands in front of your face like this. Okay. Now, can you see out? You probably can still see. It's not that easy, but you can still see. But is it easy to engage in your life right now with your hands like this? No. It's hard to maintain conversations. It's hard to engage in behaviors that you find, meaningful. It's hard to engage in your life. Now, what happens when you distance your hands from your face? Okay, now you could probably engage in your life a little bit more. Still kind of annoying that your hands are still pretty close to your face. What if you distance them completely away from your face? So you're not getting rid of your hands. You're not fighting with your hands. You're not dissolving your hands. You're just creating a lot of distance between you and your hands. Now you can engage in your life much better. You can focus on the present moment. You can do the things that you want to do without being too disturbed. So in this exercise, your hands correspond to your thoughts. And so when your thoughts are over here, let's say you have the thought that I'm a failure or I'm a loser. When your thoughts are over here, I'm a loser, I'm a loser, I'm a loser, it's hard to engage in your life. When you put the thoughts over here, you didn't fight with it, you didn't argue with it, you didn't change the thoughts, but now you can live your life even though the thought is hanging around in the background, so to speak. Okay? Another metaphor, and soon we'll get more into specific techniques for cognitive diffusion, but another metaphor, well, I should say a metaphor. So that was an experiential exercise we just did. There's a very famous metaphor in ACT called the passengers on the bus metaphor. And passengers on the bus metaphor goes like this. Imagine you're a bus driver and you know the destination where you have to get to, and you're driving along the proper road, right? So in ACT terms, like your values can be the direction that you're going in, where you know you the direction in which you know you want to be driving in. And the committed action is driving on the proper path, taking the proper bus route to get to where you want to get to. And all of a sudden you hear passengers on the bus telling you you're going the wrong way, or yelling at you, or threatening you and say, make a right here, make a left there. So you probably make a right, you make a left, but eventually you notice you're not getting to where you want to get to, and you're just driving all over the place, listening to all the passengers on the bus. And so what this refers to is the passengers correspond to your thoughts and your emotions. So we spoke about your values or committed action, but then our thoughts and our emotions get in the way of us living the life we want to live. And so ultimately, as the bus driver, what you need to do is stay committed to your goal, kind of disregarding the thoughts and the emotions that are getting in the way, and staying resolute to what your plan is. So how do you just ignore these really scary thoughts, these really scary emotions? So now we're going to talk more about that on the next slides with some more specific techniques. Cognitive diffusion. Okay, so diffusion means the idea is like originally you're fused with your thoughts, you're like attached with your thoughts, and the goal is to defuse, to detach, to create distance between you and your thoughts. So one approach relates to the idea of deliteralization, which we'll talk more about in a moment. There's also more meditative type of approaches. There are letting go approaches. And then there's creating distance. So these are just a few examples. I split them up into these categories. So when it comes to deliteralization, one way you could do this through rapid repetition. So maybe do this along with me. Think of maybe a thought that you've had about yourself. That's just like 2 words. Maybe the thought like we used before, like I'm a loser, or I'm hopeless, right? And now say that phrase or those words to your like out loud very fast, as fast as you can, and as many times as you can. All right. So maybe like 20 times as fast as you can. So I'll do it along with you. I'm a loser, 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 I'm a loser. At some point, I don't even know where the phrase begins and where it ends. It's I'm a loser, or is it I'm a loser, loser, I'm a loser, I'm a loser, I'm a loser, loser, I'm a loser, I'm a loser, I'm a loser. At some point, it kind of like loses its meaning. And that's one example of how to create distance with your thoughts, like recognizing thoughts are just thoughts until you give them meaning, right? We all have thousands of thoughts a day, probably. And some of the thoughts are fantasy, some are realistic, but you're unsure if they're true, some are true, some are fears. You don't have to be a slave to your mind and gatekeep all of these thoughts and respond to all these thoughts and answer all these thoughts. So the cognitive diffusion approach says just diffuse from them. Another approach is singing the thoughts, maybe to the tune of Happy Birthday. So I'm a loser, 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 I'm a loser. Great, thank you very much. And it kind of loses its meaning that way sometimes. Or there's this kind of computer screen approach where you imagine the words I'm a loser, or you can even put on your computer screen and then change the color, change the art, change the texture, change the size. And the more you play with it on the screen, or the more you imagine yourself playing with it in your mind, the more again it kind of loses its meaning. So that's a deliteralization. Then we have these meditation type techniques, which in short is just the idea of observing thoughts as just thoughts. So anytime you practice any kind of mindfulness, it usually involves you kind of observing your thoughts without judgment and not really engaging with the thoughts, just observing them for what they are. So this could be another approach where you sit there and you could notice the thoughts you're having, recognize them as just thoughts, and you become more of an observer of your thoughts than being fused and attached to your thoughts. Other approaches are ways to let go of the thoughts. So you can imagine the thoughts on a stream, and maybe leaves are falling on the stream, and every leaf represents another thought, and the thought goes away on the stream. The stream might come back around, and that's fine. Then it flows again. Again, it's another way to help you let go, recognize thoughts for what they are, and not give them meaning, not attached to them. Conveyor belt. You can imagine like packages on a conveyor belt, and those are your thoughts. And then creating distance, which I think is a very powerful one, even just by rephrasing the thought experience that you're having can be very helpful. So imagine you're having the thought once again that I'm a loser. So say that out loud and see what it feels like. I'm a loser, right? It doesn't feel good. It feels kind of heavy. You feel kind of like you lose all your energy, your interest in life. Now, instead of saying I'm a loser, say I'm having the thought that I'm a loser. What does that feel like? And then let's create some more distance by saying my mind is sending me the thought that I'm a loser. And we could do even more than that and say, I'm noticing my mind sending me the thought that I'm a loser. And that's really the most accurate way, right? Like you may think you're a loser, your friend might think you're not a loser. There's no objective truth to that. And yet, what's really happening is that you are noticing that your mind, which sends you many thoughts throughout the day, is sending you one now that you're a loser, right? So I'm noticing my mind sending me the thought that I'm a loser. Great. Thank you, mind, for that thought. Now I'm going on my day. So this is another way to create distance, another approach, specific technique for cognitive diffusion. Then we're going to go on to the acceptance part of the Hexaflex. And for acceptance skills, it can begin by just naming the feeling, like I'm feeling anxiety or sadness or fear. You want to commit to allowing it to be there. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're not trying to stop it. We're not trying to weaken it. Allow it to be there. Make space for it. Observe it as if you were a curious scientist who, for the first time, came across this emotion. So start observing it, like, okay, what does it feel like? Where does it begin in my body? Where does it end? You can even give it attributes like shape and color and texture. Like if it had a color, what color would it be? If it had a shape, what shape would it be? If it had a weight, how heavy would it be? You can breathe into the emotion and breathe into your body, kind of making space, creating more space for the emotion to live there, thereby making room for it. And ultimately, what we're doing here is we're trying to experience the emotion for what it is without feeling like it's taking over my whole experience. Like your experience is more than just your emotion, but sometimes it feels like we are just our emotions, right? When anxiety is really strong or we're really afraid, it feels like it's fully encompassing. So the goal of acceptance skills is to accept the emotion, make space for it, make room for it without attaching to it. And that way it's kind of similar to cognitive diffusion for thoughts, while acceptance is more for emotions and feelings. So that leaves us with the last two components of the Hexaflex, contact with the present moment. The idea behind this one is there are many people that suffer from mental health issues throughout their lives, or there are many worriers or ruminators, people that are ruminating about the past, people that are worrying about the future. But if you think about it, for most points in your life, the actual present moment is not that distressing for most people. You're comfortable, you're safe, you're well fed. What creates the stress for the most part is us worrying and thinking about the future or ruminating and thinking about the past. And so this part of the Hexaflex tries reminding us to try to make contact with the present moment and stay in the present moment. So when you're noticing your mind trying to pull you into the past or the future, diffuse from the thoughts and get back to the present moment. That's what this part of the Hexaflex is all about. And the last part that we are discussing today is self as context. Now, this is, for some people, the most confusing one. I'll try to make it very simple. The way to think about self as context is to contrast it with self as content. All right, so what we're looking for is self as context instead of self as content. You don't want to be the content. Metaphor that's given for this is imagine you are the chessboard. Okay, so the thoughts, the feelings are the chess pieces. All of that is playing within you, on top of you, but you are the chessboard observing all of it. And this is a very important stance to help you with cognitive diffusion, to help you with acceptance, to help you with contact with the present moment. The idea here is you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions. You are you. You are an observer of your experience. And this helps you not feel so fused and enmeshed with your emotion and with your thoughts, and it can help you then go ahead with cognitive diffusion and acceptance and contact with the present moment. So in short, we spoke about the hexaflex and how there is the goal is to create psychological flexibility. And now you can put it all together here where you see we have values, right? We're engaging in committed action in line with our values. We are as if we're a bus driver on the bus, like the metaphor we spoke about earlier. And we are not going to be dissuaded by our thoughts or our emotions, and we're not trying to change them or make them go away. We're just changing our relationship to them or with them. We are creating distance between us and our thoughts. We are self as context, not as self as content. We are observing our thoughts and emotions, and we can distance ourselves from them by using the cognitive diffusion techniques I mentioned before. And we're making space for our emotions and accepting them instead of trying to fight them or shut them down. And through all this, we're trying to make contact with the present moment and staying in the here and now. So let's talk about some case examples and how we'll apply the ACT model to these examples. And keep in mind, I am putting out other videos on anxiety disorders and depression, and I always try including at least one slide on how ACT approaches those disorders for more specifics of how to apply the ACT model. Let's take the case of depression. So someone is feeling very depressed, feeling very hopeless, having thoughts like, this is my situation's never going to get better. There's no point to life. Why should I even try? So the ACT model will say, well, let's slow it down for a moment. What are your values in life? My values are to, help society, help my family, have fun, whatever it might be. Okay, what does committed action look like within those values? Right? What behaviors do you have to engage in? Okay, so I need to spend time with my family. I need to travel, to have fun, whatever the committed action might be. Great. Now, let's identify thoughts that are getting in the way of you living the life that you want to live. Well, thoughts of like, my situation's hopeless, there's no point to life, are thoughts that are getting in the way of your committed action. Right? It comes back to the question of workability, like we mentioned before. Are these thoughts workable? Are they helping you function in your life in a way that's in line with your values? And the answer is clearly not. So we're going to diffuse from those thoughts. We're going to use any of those cognitive diffusion techniques mentioned earlier, but create distance between you and the thoughts so that now you can more freely gain some more psychological flexibility and engage in the life that you want to engage in. Yeah, okay, so I'm getting rid of the thoughts, but I still feel like this pit in my stomach and I can't get out of bed. Great. Let's go around the hexaflex to the acceptance portion and create space for their emotions, not trying to get rid of them, but observing it, labeling it, making space for it. And then usually it's easier to kind of ignore it and get on with your life with the committed action portion. But I'm thinking about the past and how many mistakes I made. Or I'm thinking about the future and what it has in store for me. Great. Let's go to the contact with the present moment portion of the ACT hexaflex. And the goal here is to say, okay, let's not think about the past or the future. Let's live presently. And your present moment is fine. Your past may have been terrible. Your future may be bad. But right now you're fine. Let's focus on that. And let's do all this while we're keeping in mind self as context instead of self as content. So you should be the observer of your thoughts and your emotions, but not feel so attached and fused to them. And through this, you can actually get up and do what you got to do. So let's take one more example before we end, an example of social anxiety. So the core fear in social anxiety is fear of negative evaluation. So someone's afraid that people are judging them, that they sound stupid, that when they go to the gym, everyone's looking at them, people are thinking about them and how they're using the machine in the wrong way, whatever it might be. So ACT will again go in and say, well, what are your values? You want to live a healthy lifestyle. Okay. What's committed action? You want to go to the gym, you want to exercise, you want to hang out with friends. These thoughts that you're having, are they helping you do that or hurting you? I don't care if they're true or not. The question is, are they helping you or hurting you live the life you want to live? They're hurting you. So we're going to engage in cognitive diffusion to help you distance yourself from your thoughts so you can actually engage in your life. And yes, you're feeling a pit in your stomach, but does that mean you have to run to the gym, or can you take a moment, make space for the emotion, recognize that it's there, and then keep living your life? And eventually the emotion tends to be less cumbersome. And you're doing all this, you're making contact with the present moment. You're not thinking about past examples of how people made fun of you in the past or what someone might tell you in the next hour. You're living in the present moment, enjoying your life, using the machinery at the gym, engaging in the gym, engaging in conversation with your friends, and you are keeping in mind self as context instead of self as content by not getting caught up in all this and just observing the thoughts and emotions that are going through your body. So in summary, the goal of ACT is psychological flexibility so that you can engage in living the life you want to live that's in line with your values. How do you get there? That's the ACT framework, the Hexaflex. We spoke about the 6 different components: values and committed action, cognitive diffusion and acceptance, contact with the present moment, and self as context as opposed to self as content. And the main question that we keep asking in ACT is workability. Are these thoughts, are these emotions workable? How do we define workability? Are they helping you live a life that's in line with your values? Are they helping you engage in value-driven behavior or not? Hope you enjoyed this video seminar. To see a full list of our current videos as well as upcoming videos that we'll be posting soon, visit us at adopsychologycenter.com and sign up to be notified when we post new videos. Bye for now.